Hey everybody, welcome back. We're coming in hot with a new BFM. We had a little bit of a hiatus there. I was going through some stuff, and then, as anyone should know, when we do record BFM, I'm a little bit more toasty than when we do the family one because that is a family show. This one's not a family show, so I get to do whatever the fuck I want, which is great. But now we're coming in hot, 2021. January episode for all you cocksuckers out there. And we're going into a movie that Danny showed me New Year's Eve. But before we get into the movie, let's talk about New Year's Eve real quick. That was a fun time. The guys came out. Julie and Danny came out. Grant also made an appearance, which is great. And I passed out
Yeah, you
about
did.
6:30. New Year's Eve. And the reason why I passed out, which is the reason why we did do an episode in December, I I went sober for 30 days, which was phenomenal. I didn't think I could do it, but hey, you know what? We did it. We made some gains. We lost some weight, and we're moving strong. And now I'm back in 2021, back on the bottle and ready to rock and roll. But I passed out, and then these guys watched it. This movie called Air, and the next day we watched it, and it was decided before then this was definitely a BFM movie. Um, and after watching it, honestly, it really is. There's so much to unpack in here. There really is. There's like a lot of small, minute things that the more that I've been thinking about it these last couple days, I'm like, wow, this was really written very well. Especially in like this post-apocalyptic kind of sense that it is. But go ahead, Danny. You found this movie. Give us a quick little preface on it.
Yeah, man. I was trying to remember how I found this movie, and I think I was just looking up Norman Reedus stuff. And I was like, oh, what is this? And then I read the synopsis, and I was like, oh, okay, this sounds like a movie I'm going to like. So yeah, I grabbed it up and then watched it. When I watched it the first time, I was like, yeah, I like these kind of movies. This is great. And also, this came out in 2015. So if I had to guess, this is around the time that Kojima was starting to work on Death Stranding. With one of these films, it kind of helped Norman get ready for Death Stranding too.
I mean, I haven't played Death Stranding yet. That's still on my list. But just based on what you guys have said about Death Stranding, it's definitely more of a sit down for me to go and like really get in there. But I mean, go ahead. Like, what's the story on?
Yeah, so this is a post-apocalyptic movie, and that was like one of the initial things that grabbed me because I'm a fan of that genre. But the real eye catcher is that it's a different look at it. So as there's this nuclear fallout, the government in America, I think it is, they decided to do this program where they would get the greatest minds from across the world and keep them safe from this and put them in a deep sleep in these chambers underground, and then they would just wait until the fallout is over, and then they could just restart humanity. And so while they're there, they have two mechanics essentially to keep an eye on them, and they sleep for about 6 months, and then they wake up and they're up for about an hour and a half to do maintenance, check on everything, look at the radiation levels outside, trying to figure out when it's safe. That's pretty much the basics synopsis here. And the other big thing that I liked is that there's really only three actors in this entire film. And when you know it's a small cast like that, you're in for a good time.
Yeah, because you get all that character development. You get to see like, the acting at its potential of like, okay, I'm gonna be with this dude for about an hour and a half. What is going to be my context of how I interact with this person? Do I even know this person outside of this, or was I just chosen? Which we do find out later that you had to volunteer for this position to be this person with another partner in this bunker, and you only have an hour and a half to do some work, and then you sleep, I think, for was it 3 months, 6 months, something like that?
6 months, yeah.
You get these two characters who are asleep for 6 months. They wake up, they have to do maintenance, make sure all these other people are fine. But here's my thing is that, and maybe I missed this, and you can confirm this for me since you've seen it a lot more than I have. Do they know what they're protecting, or do they just know that they have to do this? Do they know that they have people suspended in animation?
Yeah, they do.
Because what had got to me, not knowing that, was that not Norman Reedus, but Digimon,
Digimon,
Gmon.
yeah.
I don't. I really want to say it. I really want to say Digimon, but I can't say that.
No, yeah, it's a Digimon Hansu.
Obviously, he knew that his wife was one of the greatest minds ever.
Hmm.
So that makes more sense as to why that he volunteered for this project. He wanted to make sure she was okay. He wanted to make sure that everything was going to be fine by the time she got out. Whatever time that was going to be. And a lot of the dialogue that we see in the film, we have an understanding of they don't even know how long they have to do this. How much longer is it going to be that they have to do this before they can even go out into the real world? With him knowing the fact that his wife is there, it's kind of like, okay, well, am I just waiting for him to kick the bucket? Like, how much longer do I have to do this? And that had really got to me because you have Norman Reedus' character who he had a family, he had a wife and kids. It sounded like he didn't have a bad life, but he just left them high and dry to go kick the bucket. And I think that's a really interesting like juxtaposition between the two. It's like somebody who had everything, well, two people who had everything, one of them who fought his life literally to hold on to that feeling versus Norman Reedus' character who was like, fuck it, I want to survive. Fuck them. Like I'm gonna live my life.
He explains it in the movie to where he thought this job wasn't going to be a real thing. As far as like this post nuclear war, he didn't think that was going to be real, so that's why he took the job because it was good money at the time.
That makes more sense now.
But then he gets scared. I think he mentions it to where there was a moment when they were closing the doors. He could have went out there for his family, but he ended up getting scared and just got stuck in there.
That makes a lot more sense now as to why his character reacts the way that he does, in certain situations.
Hmm.
But we start the film off with these two guys coming out of their cryogenic sleep for their 6 months. Not cryogenic, but their sleep for 6 months, and they're like, okay, we gotta do this. Like, who's gonna do what? So obviously they've determined like, okay, we take turns checking on certain things. And the minute the climax started, like the rising action began, which was when I think it was Digimon's bed stopped working, right? So then they had to go into the process of trying to get more air into the room because the air can only be good for an hour and a half. And then their whole process of having to go and fix up the machine and all this kinds of stuff, like it was like to me was like, you know what? Digimon really didn't care about this guy that much.
Hmm.
He already had his end goal in mind. He's like, whether he survives or not is not my problem. I'm gonna do what I have to do for my wife. It's not even it's not even for the people anymore. It's not even for the greatest minds of that bunker. It's like, no, I'm doing this for my wife. I don't give a fuck about you. And I really like how the reveal towards it was at the end and that he kept seeing her in this like psychosis form. Everything he was doing, she was always there. She was always present. And I kept wondering why. And about halfway through the film, like, dude, she must be somebody important to him. Either that's somebody he lost or she's probably still alive somewhere. And the fact that she was there the entire time really made it that much more powerful that like, no, you know what? My motives were always the same way. Norman Reedus, he's a good guy. He made a mistake in his life, but he's in it just to do the job. While, the motive just was much more important. And I think that should be said because I mean just the way that they interact with stuff. Like Digimon was always very like, okay, dude, we have to do it. I don't want to do it, but I have to do it. And Norman Reedus was kind of like, dude, it'll be fine. How bad
Yeah.
can it really be? And every time they would check the air, it's like, oh fuck, dude, it's pretty bad. Even when they had to put on the suits and like go around, like pretty bad.
Yeah, I really like their dynamic in the film because they represent like two sides of the post-apocalypse, right? Where Norman Reedus, right, since he lost his family, he kind of has no hope anymore. So he's being a realist.
Hmm.
And then we have
Hmm.
Digimon's character, and he's very hopeful and desperate because his wife is there. And as soon as we get the first reveal of him seeing his wife walking around talking to him, I was like, oh, okay, this is where we're going. This is great because my favorite thing about the film, I think, is we don't know the time frame for this, right?
Yeah,
Because since it's like a
exactly.
sci-fi thing, we could say that you can get away with them not aging in these 6 months, especially at the end of the film, right? When eventually the levels do drop down to zero and everybody wakes up and we see Digimon. We don't know how long it's been since. So I like that, and the first thing I thought of was like, oh, okay, this is about isolation and what it does to the mind, right? And I figured like, yeah, like Digimon's getting desperate because they've been alone for so long. His mind is starting to go crazy. Even though he's the calm and collected one, deep down he's really driving him crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note too, because you have two kinds of people who will survive in isolation, right? And this is just like also by psychological standpoints. You have the person who's going to come to their limitations and be like, yeah, you know what? This is where I'm at. This is how I'm gonna have to navigate through my life, right? And then they're probably gonna be calm and collected. They're gonna have their feelings of remorse. They're gonna have their emotions that come up. But at the end of the day, they're gonna be like, you know what? This is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. Now, you go to Digimon's character, and he is calm and collected on the outside, but on the inside, he is mortified. He is breaking down. That's why we see his wife appear so much throughout the film when she's in her sleep, because he is now cracking down. And again, this is where sci-fi really does a phenomenal job in this realm of time, because we don't really know, right? It's like you said, we don't know how long they've been in here. We don't know how long it's been since the nuclear fallout happened, and we don't know how long it's going to be. So when you take that into consideration, you have two characters who have 3 hours of life every year, essentially, right? And then they go back to sleep. So with that in mind, it even puts more effort onto like what is happening to you in the mind. Do you dream in your sleep? Like what is going on? Like, like what are the effects that are really happening to you? And you start to see that unravel as their scene goes on, where like the bed breaks down for Digimon, and I keep saying Digimon, and I'm gonna probably gonna keep saying it, but fuck it. And like you start to see all of this go down, especially when they have to go and get the maintenance equipment from a bunker next door where everybody's already dead. So we have to assume that there's probably a ton of other bunkers where those individuals also did die. And the thing that gets to me most, and I thought about this the other day, is that okay, say that those two people who were watching their bunker also passed away, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe they didn't. What about the other folks? There's only one spare for each bunker, for each two bunkers that are like conjoined together. So who's to say this didn't already happen somewhere else? And that even if it did happen, what if the other person used the spare? What if the other two people who went to go look for the spare went to the other bunker, killed those folks, took their equipment to keep those people alive, or even themselves alive? So now it's a story of survival, right? It's like, okay, well, you have Norman Reedus' character who's like, no, dude, we're gonna do it together, we're gonna survive. But Digimon is kind of like, no, but I'm going to survive. It's for me. It's not for you. I don't give a fuck about you. Like, yeah, we've been doing this for God knows how long, but at the end of the day, like, you're you're going, dude. You're gone. And we really see that when Norman Reedus is like, hey man, I'll go in the bed. I'll do a test run. And Digimon's like, no, 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 dude. Like, let me do it. He goes, it's mine. He goes, no, no, no. Let's make sure it's good, but you watch me. And when that scene happens where the bed snaps in on him and he's there and he's about to kick the bucket, he's about to fucking die. Like we have the assumption that like, oh, maybe he walked away or whatever may have happened. But then we see later on it's like, no, he was just standing there the whole time. And that's what really pushed it to me again of the motive of like, dude, I don't give a fuck about you. Like I am here to do what I'm gonna do. Not what you have to do, not what you came here for. Like it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And it's again like that delusion stuff because his imaginary wife is convincing him this entire time. Which, I wish we got the answer to that at some point in the movie, but because I'm like, yeah, why would you want to just kill him now? It doesn't make sense. Like if the buildup was, oh, there's no more spares, the only option is to kill him, then that makes sense. But yeah, just this,
Mhm.
I guess because it's just been so long down there and he's just been driven crazy. I guess that's what it is.
And again, it goes back to the whole isolation thing and what I said. Like, there's two kinds of people who will survive in isolation. Well, there's actually one kind of person. There's the one who will understand their limitations and move on, right? And that's the only kind of person who will survive. The
Hmm.
other person is going to have their delusion, their psychosis is going to get all fucked up. They're going to make a whole bunch of things, and everything's going to go wrong. And that's what started to happen to him. And again, the whole factor of time is so important in this because I, and correct me if I'm wrong, but every time they went to go look at the channels, I feel like that was old material. How could they be able to broadcast this to these bunkers where, let's say, and this could also just be a sci-fi thing, where like, how could these people get that transmission? You know what I mean?
From what, like from the TVs?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they just have like DVDs or something of them. Yeah.
this thought just popped into my head. We talked about what was that movie? The one with Natalie Portman.
Oh, Annihilation.
Yeah, Annihilation. So that's another sci-fi, post-apocalyptic in like the state of Florida, essentially. So seeing what they had to do to survive, again, it was like we got to get to the lighthouse. Now their lighthouse in this essentially is like, okay, no, we have to survive for these people. We have to make sure that we are the lighthouse for them to wake up to, and what is, again, I think motive is really one of the biggest key elements in the story because it's like, well, what do I have to do? While in Annihilation, it's like, okay, well, I have to survive, but I have to come across all these different hurdles of the light refraction, and me transforming into something else that I'm not actually really am, and by the end of the film, we see that, you know, uh, Digimon he's survived. Norman Reedus is dead. They had their fallout, and we see how much he has aged. So it put into my mind, did you even really need two people, or was this always like a battle between human versus human, essentially, which is how it started because it's a nuclear fallout. So obviously, we had we probably had one faction against the other, or many factions against each other, who just all threw out the fucking nuclear warheads, right? Where in Annihilation, we have
Hmm.
a group of people, all from different wakes of life, going into an environment who are volunteers as well, but their motives are all extremely different because of their backgrounds. They have a different reason why they want to be in there. One of them had cancer, the other one was an army vet, the other one was in the military, um, then became army vet. The other one, I can't remember what her character was, the gal from Thor Ragnarok, but everybody had their own thing, and it's kind of the same thing here. Like we have our own reason why we're doing this, but at the end of the day, was it just a test against human versus human? Because obviously Norman Reedus had come to terms with his loss and said, "Hey, I already lost him. It sucks, but I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing because that's what I came here to do." While we have Digimon's character, who's kind of like, "No, I didn't lose anything yet. It's all still right there for me."
Yeah, another great part for it is like the suspense that they have throughout the whole film. Especially the tense moments of like what's gonna happen next, right? Once Norman discovers that he was betrayed, and then he ends up getting the gun that they find outside of their chamber, and then even just like the anticipation of Digimon going to the other facility and how the tension builds up there.
Hmm.
It's all really really good. Best parts of the film for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And especially when the transmission between their radios starts to like crap out, and when Norman is like, for some reason, he decides to go check the cameras, right? And that's when he realizes, it's like, dude, you fucking left me here. Or was that afterwards? I think that was afterwards. But, just that whole suspense of like, dude, you only have so many minutes to go and find this thing. And as he's continuously going through that pipe, he starts to see the bodies of these other people. It's like, okay, well, if they didn't make it, am I going to make it? And then if I can't make it, I can't see my wife. And all of this is going to be for naught. While Norman Reedus is going to be there, like, I'm still going to do the job, but he wouldn't know anything. So I feel, and I was a little upset that Norman Reedus' character died, but I think story-wise, it made the most sense. it had to be that way for us to see the ultimate resolution.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it because it's obviously we're rooting for Norman Reedus the whole time, and yeah, to come with that kind of ending uh, is a shocker, but it's not a disappointment. Yeah, because at the end of the film, it makes sense that he would Norman would rather be the sacrifice because he has nothing left.
Exactly. And that he had already sacrificed everything, you know. Like
Hmm.
just to put more emphasis on it, like he had gone through his life to do what he had to do, and he's just doing the job. He's just that's all he has. That's his only motive at this point, you know. And then you have Digimon who's just he's like, I will do anything possible, you know. And you could even go so far as to say he's the real villain. He's the real antagonist of the film because he already knows so much more than Norman does. The entire progression of the film. You know, he knows about this project. I was because his wife is one of the greatest minds. You know, he volunteered for this because he wanted to protect her and protect his future. While Norman was kind of like, it's good money. I'll do it, but at what cost? You know, it goes that whole quote like, "Oh, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it." Well, yeah, you know, you probably will never see that money. He never did, you know, and now he's just sitting idly by. Well, not anymore. He's laying idly by. But this was one of the first. I can't remember if I've read or seen anything with this kind of a concept where you have two individuals with this dynamic that are having to carry this weight for these other individuals, essentially, right? So seeing this put into my mind, you know, this is a really great story. You know, you have the post-apocalyptic stuff. You've got so many people all around the globe who are caring for, was it six individuals in their bunker? I think it was.
Yeah, it's like 6 or 8.
So, you know, they now are tasked with this duty, essentially, to take care of these people for God knows how long and make sure that everything's fine. I don't think I've seen or read it before, and to see that, and it was done really well. The writing was phenomenal, and I think just the end resolution was really what had got me. It's like, no, he made it to the end of the day. But again, we have to put into consideration the time, right? And like I said, they have 3 hours every year because it's 6 months they're in sleep. They have an hour and a half, go back to sleep, do it again. So, I mean, the time really could go by pretty quickly. I want to say it had to at least have been like 20, 30 years because the way we see Digimon's character at the very end, he's old. He's aged a lot. I'm sure that the sci-fi world would be like, okay, well, you know, he was sleeping a lot, so he could be a lot older. But sci-fi does their own Magic Kingdom Hearts bullshit where it's like, no, you were sleeping for a lot of the time. You're fine. You were totally fine. But just seeing all of that, it was really good. You know, it was a resolution I was hoping for after Norm Reedus' character died, but again, it sucks, but it had to happen that way.
I'm on the side that's okay with not finding out the how long it's been because that's not what's important for the story. It's just as long as you acknowledge that there's been a substantial amount of time that's passed, and that's what really sets a lot of stuff in motion.
Exactly. You know, and just more to emphasize on that, you know, it's not the time, it's the isolation and what that does to a human. You know, like
Hmm.
what does that really do to somebody when they have so much to offer, so much to sacrifice for, so much more of a goal that they're looking for at the end of the day. And not everybody can do that, you know, and clearly, again, like I've been saying, he, I'm pretty sure Digimon's character at some point, you know, like between the lines, had probably thought, if I have to kill this guy, I'm going to do it. If I got to take his bed, I'm going to do it. But how it was going to happen was really the climax essentially.
And again, I appreciate this side of the picture, I guess, because with post-apocalyptic stuff like this, we're always watching them in the outside world, and there's usually like factions that they have to fight as well and all that. And just to have a closed environment is really refreshing and really keeps you engaged, the whole time.
Yeah, there was not a moment I wasn't on the edge of my seat, just like wondering what was going to happen between the two because it really gave you the idea. And like you said, like anytime I've ever seen or read anything post-apocalyptic, it's like we're on the outside, we're trying to survive. Well, these characters are already surviving and they're thriving. They have an hour and a half to do their job, which is, I guess, more than plenty of time to do it, but how are they actually going to do it? How are they going to interact with each other? Do they interact with each other? All these kinds of elements start getting put into place, and you have to think, okay, well,
Hmm.
it can only go so many different directions at this point. Like, we're pretty well versed in a lot of kinds of content, based on a lot of the manga that we read, and the films that we watch. So, like, when we see something like this, or like just any kind of concept, it's like you can only go so many directions, right? It's like I told you offline when I was watching The Little Things last night. I'm like, dude, there's only two ways this is gonna go, and it's only those two ways, And it ended up being one over the other, and I'm like, okay, this way actually makes much more sense than the secondary one that I was initially thinking. But to see it happen is an entirely different thing. It's an element of storytelling that I believe works phenomenally well because I read this somewhere over the last few days where like if you tell a story and someone starts to figure it out, that's not a bad thing, right? Because you've given out all the elements, you've given out all the working components of storytelling. And if somebody's able to say, "Oh, okay, you know what? That's where you're going to go." Cool. How do we get there now? Right? As opposed to, "Oh, I never even thought of that." Which is also a very good element of storytelling, but at that point it's like, "Okay, well, where's your movement going? Is it towards the characters? Is it to the environment, right? So all these different elements that I know of storytelling, if I put into comparison with this film, it was all great. It was all phenomenal. Everything that everybody did was just something that was it had to be done that way and no other way. Because I know a lot of films, a lot of sci-fi, and I'll put Star Trek, in here too. Like sometimes they'll bring in elements into an episode, into like a two-parter, three-parter. It's like okay, well that worked, but there was a lot of meat missing. Like I'm not trying to go vegan. I'm trying to have a full like wagyu beef steak in front of me, and I want to enjoy it the whole way through. If you give me a whole bunch of fucking salad and bullshit and a whole fucking dressing, I'm gonna look at you and tell you to go suck your own fucking cock. Like we're not doing that here. I'm trying to enjoy the meal of what I'm getting, essentially, right? And not only just being on the edge of my seat the whole time, but seeing it unravel the way that it did, it was very fulfilling to me. Oh shit, Kiwami 2 just finished downloading.
Oh shit.
Yeah. But yeah, I really like this film. I think for anyone that's into sci-fi, I highly recommend. I think it's a really good time. Go into it very vanilla. If you've seen it, hope you enjoyed it. It's I think this is the second thing I've seen Norman Reedus act in besides The Walking Dead. So seeing him act in this kind of way, I'm like, okay, I like this a lot, and I can see where Kojima had the idea to be like, I want this guy to be the main character for Death Stranding. Like, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. In this movie, he's very more like his personality is, and that's cool that he could have fun with it. Like when he's like joking around and stuff in the film. Like that's just Norman Reedus in general. Um, but yeah, like the stuff he talks about and all that. Yeah, it kind of fits into what he does in Death Stranding. Which just for like the comparison's sake is because they're both abstract sci-fi stories involving the same guy.
hmm and again, this is a film and a story where I feel sci-fi is at its full potential because you can play around so much with it. Especially when we get to see where the other folks in the bunker next door have already died, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even if the spare didn't work, they could still go to the other area. And what I also really liked was that when they found a way to get more air, it's like, okay, we only have this much more time, right? So for the film being an hour and a half, I think is what it right around was,
Yeah.
this made perfect sense. It's like, okay, no, now we're in real time, right? So when a story makes it real time like that, I'm way much more engaged because we don't have to worry about the time anymore. Now we know, okay, this is exactly what they're doing. This is all that they have. So how are they going to get there? How are they going to find their resolution?
Yeah, especially in the moment when they have to open a door and that causes them to lose time because, the air has to travel into that extra room that's been sealed off for so long.
Exactly.
Yeah, really great stuff, man. Digimon as well. I think he does a fantastic job. His performance, I think, is the highlight for me because he's the one that's kind of pushing the narrative forward, right? Whereas Norman, like, yeah, he's doing good, but he's just having fun for most of the time until things start to get serious.
Exactly. And again, it just goes right back to the motive. You know, the character who's most motively driven is going to be the one who changes the pace of the film or the story in any kind of element that you're in, whether it be sci-fi, or like a shoujo, anything like that. Like whoever has the most motive is going to be the one who drives it. And knowing at the very end that he had that motive is why the film made this direction that it did. And it was honestly really successful.
Yeah, great little double A film. Should definitely get more attention for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's like, I mean, it's like Detachment, the whackness that you showed me. It's like I wish I saw these sooner because these were really, really great films. And I hope that, there's a resurgence of like, films from like the 2010s to the early 2000s, you know, 90s and so forth. Like every decade always has a good amount of films for their respective genres. I think this is a really good standout film for sci-fi and post-apocalyptic, you know, genre. But yeah, for today, that's all we had. I think with that we can really end this off, give it a good send off. But definitely check out Air. BFM will be back on its monthly run now that I'm back on the bottle, which is it's a good and bad thing. I'm still getting my tolerance back up. I'm trying not to pass out, and start blowing chunks everywhere. But no, this was a really, really good one. We've definitely got some really great films. We even have one video game that's going to have probably a very long episode because there's a lot to go through in that one. Um, but yeah, thanks for checking this out. If you have any questions, want to send us an email, that's going to be bigfmoodpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out Unverse Podcast, our main mother, and Marvel Talk also just dropped a new episode, I think yesterday or today, or a few days ago, whenever this drops. But yeah, definitely check us all out everywhere, and we will catch you on the next Big Fucking Mood.
If anything seems off, just give a sign.
Set me up.
Ready?
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. What?
You hear that?
I don't hear anything.
Sounds like a leak.
Really?
Yeah. And the air's definitely getting thinner in here.
You sure?
Yeah. Check the air pump.
I'll be down check.
All right. Hey, let me out of here. I'll check it. I'll check it myself. All right. Car right.